talking about Star Trek. I believe we saw it early.
Yeah, day before it came out.
Yeah,
two days before.
2 days before it came out. So it's a little after the fact, but so we're going to talk about Star Trek. There will be spoilers in the last half.
Yeah, we'll let you know when there's spoilers. So before spoilers, Star Trek Beyond is about, the Star Trek people.
Yeah, if you don't know by now, why are you watching?
Yeah, probably should go watch the other ones.
Yeah, this is the third movie in the series.
This one is not directed or written by J.J. Abrams, although he is the executive producer for it. It was directed by the guy that made a lot of the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah.
And co-written by Simon Pegg, the guy that plays Montgomery Scott.
Yeah, and Simon Pegg. Everyone knows Simon Pegg.
You should know.
Oh, you should.
Don't know.
Why are you
Just leave. Go.
So it's about Captain Kirk and his ship and his people, and they're doing stuff, and they're in space.
That is
they land on this planet, and then that's where
chaos ensues, most anything that's sci-fi. So, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really enjoyable. It was definitely different than the first two. The first two are very dark and heavy, and there's a lot of, introduction of characters, and, let's get the right dynamic here, and this is gonna, we're gonna really pull at your heartstrings. This one is a lot more like the TV show was.
A little more campy. Fun.
It's a little bit more campy. It's,
still serious in parts, but, yeah, it was definitely more.
But it still has, a good, they have, morals and good things that they're going for, but it's not quite as heavy or serious as the other ones.
Yeah, it's a lot lighter.
And it's funnier, I think.
Way funnier. So I definitely recommend this movie.
Yeah, if you like the other two, or if you like the original ones, or anything to do with Star Trek, you'll probably like this movie.
Don't be elitist about it. It's Star Trek and it's fun.
Just let people enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fine, if you don't enjoy it, that's fine.
Yeah,
but if
you probably will if you go with an open mind. And,
yeah, I mean, it's not the original Star Trek cast. They're dead. So, a lot of them are dead, though, I think. But that's beside the point.
Yes.
It's never going to be the original, and we don't need it to be.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was a really good adaptation.
And they're making at least one more. Because Chris Hemsworth was recast as the dad, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's returning as his father in the next one.
Fun fact.
Fun fact. That's maybe a spoiler, but it's not really.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I guess that's it. Pre-spoilers. That's all I can really
recommend the movie. Done. Okay. Now on to spoilers.
Yes.
From this point on, we'll be spoiling things. So don't watch it if you haven't seen it.
Okay, so spoilers.
It had some really good music. There was
let's talk about the sabotage scene.
Yeah.
That was the corniest, funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Super campy and corny and just amazing.
In the best way possible. When something is so dorky that you're just smiling so hard and you're oh my god, what is this? That was how I felt.
Yeah.
I was this is amazing and so dumb at the same time.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't remember, which I didn't originally, but that's the song that they play in the first one when he drives his stepdad's car off the cliff. They're playing the Sabotage song. That's why it's oh, good choice. And then I like when they're all dancing,
yeah.
So
it was just such a fun scene, and it was a good place to add that in to where it was offsets any seriousness. This planet's about to be exploded, and let's all dance a little.
Yeah.
And that's why this movie was way more like the show, where it was had those little funny, weird moments that made it so that it almost didn't feel like it was serious at all. It was just very.
They had a good
fun.
way to bring you out of the darkness,
Yeah.
And then my biggest complaint about the movie is I felt the villain, the main villain guy, didn't really make sense to me. He did to an extent, but it was your reasoning is not sound in any way. I was born into war, so I must cause everybody else to be in a war.
Well, I think his more thing was that he crash landed on that planet, and then nobody came to rescue him, and all of his crew was dying and starving, and so basically he took his war mentality and turned it into like a war against the Empire or Galactic Federation. I was like, what are we talking about?
It just like didn't make sense because like they have this whole scene, the last like fight scene where he's like fighting Chris Pine's character, Captain Kirk, and he's like, this is what I was born into. This makes people strong, and he's like, oh, and he spends that whole time being like, oh, you're working together makes you weak, and it was like you have a huge army that you like. The main focus of is like so you can all work in like perfect harmony with one another, because if you're not, then you all fall apart. So you can't argue that that's like not right, and then be like, this is the same thing. I'm like, that doesn't make sense for a character to do that to me. And like, and then at the end where he's just like, this is what I was born into, like that was the whole point of it. And then Chris Pine was like, this is what I was born into, and I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like it just doesn't. It didn't make any sense to me. That like, especially the second time I saw it, where I was like,
I just feel like it was more like he did all this war stuff and like killed all these people, and then it was peace, and then it's like any soldier who comes back to civilian life and they don't know what to do themselves anymore. Right. So then he goes and he's like trying to be this captain of this
200 years trying to like start another war. And I'm like, wow.
I mean, that was because he was like basically being corrupted by this like technology that was keeping him alive, and he used like was sapping people's life forces in order to stay alive. So it just probably changes someone.
Right. But they never explained that in the thing, so it couldn't have like that's just us, guessing at what had happened to him. So we don't actually know if that really affected him in that way, because they didn't present that as an idea in the movie.
I mean, they kind of did.
They changed his outward appearance, but he's just as crazy in the last thing as he is in when he fights Captain Kirk, like in his last captain's log. To like the very end, he has like the same bullshit that he's like.
He's just going crazy on this like deserted planet while he starved to death. So it's just like.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it didn't make any sense. And then like they have the scene where like he finally starts to look like himself again, because he's like taking the energy of humans or whatever, however that works. And then they have the scene where there's like glass flying around, and he like sees his reflection, and then he goes up like he's going to like help Captain Kirk, but then he like goes to like stab him instead. But I was like, why did you include that? Like it was such a weird shot to include for no purpose at all. Like it was just him like looking at himself and then continuing to be his like being completely insane. Like I thought, it was like it seemed like it was gonna be like I remembered myself, I remembered who I am, but it wasn't like that. It was just like, okay, now I'm gonna continue to go and attack this guy. It was like it seemed like such a worthless thing to like throw in there. Like they were gonna redeem him in some way, and then they didn't.
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked out if they redeemed him, because he wasn't really a redeemable character at that point.
Right. Well, that's like what I was saying. So I was like, first when I saw that, I was like, oh, they're about to like, is he about to help him? Because I was like, that wouldn't have made any sense. But then he didn't help him. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But why they include that scene is like what bothers me about it.
I mean, I don't really know what their thought process was. Maybe it was just him like seeing himself again and then being like, this is it, this is what I need to do, or something, like looking in his own eyes and being like, yes.
Though I feel like the incomplete thought process of a villain is like very, like I feel like that again to me like represents what it would be like in the original series, because you see that in a lot of like older sci-fi stuff. It's like villains that like can be evil just for the sake of evil, and like they have these reasons that are sort of like, it doesn't quite make sense. It's like, I get it, you're crazy, but you've also spent like all this time like doing things that are like backwards to what you believe. It's like not very well like written character, and you see that a lot in the like older stuff, I feel like, more than you do now. And that's what it reminded me of. Was like even the villain is like not as well concise as like the first two Star Treks, where you have the villains that like really make sense. Like you're like, okay, I completely understand why this person is the way they are. And with him, I was like, I didn't feel like it was completely clear. But they spent so much more time on like the people, like all, because they all get like stranded on the planet like separately, and like have these different like bonding things with all these different groups.
Yeah,
I feel like they spent so much time with that, which I enjoyed, that they didn't spend quite enough time on the like villain to really make me believe him.
Yeah, that's true. They could have spent more time on that, but it was already kind of long. it kind of
It's
started...
only 2 hours long.
Yeah, but in my opinion, it started to drag a little bit near like
well, that was
the
the thing. It was like the action sequences were so good, and then the end dragged. And
it was like dragging, and that was probably maybe the last like 15, 20 minutes or something, and it was kind of like, dang, how long have we been here?
Yeah.
And it was like, that was like my major complaint, is that I was like, you could have done it better to where you like didn't drag. I don't know, it just like felt like that last like fight sort of sequency thing was just kind of like...
I feel that way a lot about movies like that, where like the fight sequences just take so long, and you like know they are, like when they're on the other planet, you're like, they're just gonna have to go all the way to the center of this other planet. I should know it before this movie is over. And of course they do, like, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, it just kind of dragged a little bit at the end. I'm like, you could have used some of that, like, concise that a bit, and maybe thrown in some other stuff.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, like, I would have liked to have known more about how that girl, the girl that's like white and black.
Yeah.
How she ended up on the planet.
Jayla.
I mean, I guess she like crashed there.
Yeah, they kind of brush over that, like they don't really explain.
Like, I'm like, she obviously wasn't from there.
Yeah, she like crashed there, I think, because she's like, this is why we're here, like why we're all here and stuff. So it's like, you assume that it's the same thing happened to her ship. It was like what happened to them. I feel like I really wish that we had gotten more information, because like on his last pilot's log, he talks about how there's 3 people left, him and 2 others. And so I was like, is that like his right-hand man and that girl? I was like, are those the other 2? Or those people? Because that's what I was thinking, especially the second time I saw them. Like, it kind of makes sense, but I was like, kind of wish I'd been given a little bit more
and then
information,
like,
as far as the
droids that they had, the ones that like pierced all the stuff, they're not actual people in there. There's like no one. I don't think there's like anyone piloting them. I think they're just like drone things.
Maybe. They don't really explain that
Which
either.
makes sense why they all have like the hive mind.
Yeah, but then whenever they start playing the music, they're like covering their ears and like looking around like a person would, like a living creature would.
Yeah, but they seemed almost more like...
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. They
things
don't really
that were connected specifically to the ships.
How he got like all this stuff and all these like enough equipment to like build all of these droids when his ship is like completely intact to the point that they can fly it later on in the movie. That, I feel like, that was my only problem, is like the parts that were about the Star Trek crew were really well done, and I really enjoyed them, and there was a lot of character growth, but the parts about like all of the villain part of it was just not like written clear enough.
The planet and like stuff, there's just like didn't really make a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's like they didn't want to like spend time on it or something, and so it ended up kind of being a little hollow.
Yeah, and if you don't think about it, it was fine, but if you like try to think about it, you're like, this was...
Yeah, and that's what was my only problem with it, is like, it's not that bad because it's still a good movie and it's still enjoyable, and you just take it at face value.
And it's just like campy old Star Trek, like, where it's like, you're not going to spend a lot of time analyzing every single episode of Star Trek, because you're
it's like if you watch something like Doctor Who or something, where it's like, this is just kind of dumb, but it's like, you watch it for the entertainment value of it.
I mean, nothing really needs to make sense because you can suspend your disbelief because you're in this thing where there's a guy that's lived 2,000 years and he rides around in a police car.
And I think that was like the hardest thing is when you watch the first 2 Star Treks, because they are well written and they have these like really well-rounded, opposition characters, that's why it was hard to suspend your disbelief for this one for me, because it was like, well, the other ones made a lot of sense, why does this one not make sense? It took me a while to be like, well, it's not written by the same people. So
and
it's
the problem with this one is they left out stuff that would have made it more cohesive. Like, where did they get this like drone people?
How'd they like build this? Are the other 2 people part of his crew? Like,
those
how
kind
did they
of like
move forward together? Like,
just like little things that could have been added in that would have like really brought it all together. So it was just like, really, it was just like little things.
Yeah,
it should have been added. It wasn't like there was a whole thing where like...
And it didn't make it a bad movie. It was just like a little slightly annoying.
Yeah.
So
but overall, good movie, good soundtrack. And I liked the new characters they brought in.
I liked Jayla a lot. I hope we see more from her, because I really, really liked her character.
And I'm interested where they're going to go with Spock, because he was kind of like questioning if he wanted to leave. And you know, wanting to make more Vulcan babies.
Yeah, but then he was like, oh, I want to socialize with you. And then she's like, you old romantic. And I'm like, I hope that they stay together because they're like my fave.
Yeah, they're cute, and maybe we'll see more of Captain Kirk's romance life. Maybe.
All right, so let us know what you think. The camera got a little lopsided, but that's okay. Shit happens, you know? We're just trying our best here.
Okay, so we're signing off, and leave a comment below and subscribe if you like this video. We don't release one all the time.
we release videos all the time, but we don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say something like that, but I was like, that's a lie. We're trying, though.
Okay, bye.